Hey guys, this is Gideon Kane from Baya Games, and this is a Guild Wars 2 combat tutorial for the Guardian. This is my Guardian White Gold. She's spec'd for survivability. The Guardian in general actually has the lowest HP modifier. That means that they naturally have the lowest base hit points, but they also have a built-in health regeneration, which allows them to regenerate health, and with a trait, a certain trait, they actually can share this regeneration with other people. So let's take a look at my traits here. As you see, I'm spec'd ever so slightly into power, but the majority of my trait points go into valor, or the toughness trait line, and honor, the vitality trait line. That's defense and hit points basically, along with my natural healing ability. The important traits that I really want to share with you would have to probably be the let's see, the the honorable shield, gain 90 toughness when wielding a shield, and reduce the cooldown of shield skills by 20%. So the shield is basically whenever you have the shield equipped, that's when you're fighting very heavy, high damage, large HP monsters, so dungeon bosses or veterans on the overworld. The Great Sword is kind of your DPS weapon set when you're out there fighting monsters, just grinding around. The Writ of Exaltation. Symbols are larger. Symbols are marks, AoE marks that get placed on the ground that affect either enemies or allies that are within the symbol. So having a larger symbol just makes the move more useful all around. Selfless Daring. When you roll, you heal yourself and nearby allies. Since dodging is a part of this game, and you're going to be dodging fairly often, it's a good idea that you gain something from it. The Thief build that I showed you earlier actually dropped Caltraps, and this one actually heals myself a little bit whenever I roll. Two-handed weapon skills recharge 20% faster. That's just all around a good thing for DPS. The Guardian does seem to have longer cooldowns on all of its moves, so you'll be spamming one more often than pretty much any other class in the game. So while the oh, one more thing, the Battle Presence. This is actually kind of misleading in its name, but probably the most useful and biggest boon to you and other players. Battle Presence. Nearby allies gain the Virtue of Resolve's passive effect. What that actually means is your Virtue of Resolve, its passive effect is regenerating health. So this is what allows you to constantly be regenerating health without needing to cast a spell or having eaten a certain food that grants regeneration. And the important part is that it also allows nearby allies to gain your level of healing. Now, since my character is specifically for survivability and for increased healing, just being around me, other players actually regenerate a lot of health per second, more than they typically would even if they had eaten one of those special foods. So having a Guardian with the Battle Presence trait spec is good for everybody. So the Guardian is a much more thoughtful class. It's much more for people that want to protect others. And the reward you get for playing the Guardian is the fact that you know your presence was beneficial to everyone around you. So I'm going to start off with the Great Sword abilities. Obviously you have your Strike, which gives you Might, which is increased power and condition damage on every third strike. The Whirling Faith, this is one of your AoE abilities. Not quite AoE, but it does affect all enemies around you. The Leap of Faith is very useful. Basically it allows you to cover a large amount of distance because the Guardian basically has no ranged attacks, so being able to leap 600 units towards your enemy is useful. The Symbol of Wrath, remember I told you the symbols are AoEs that get placed on the ground. In this case this one grants Retaliation, which is really interesting in that it reflects incoming damage back to its source. So basically any enemy that's attacking you within this circle actually hurts themselves by continuing to attack you. This is probably my favorite move with the Guardian. It's the Binding Blade with pull. By pressing it once, and I'll have to show you on the field, it actually throws out chains that will cause damage over time to an enemy. But by pressing it again, you actually break those chains and pull the enemies towards you. So this allows you to battle a large amount of foes, even foes that stay at range, because you can throw out these binding blade chains and then suck them to you, and then say throw down a symbol of wrath or a whirling wrath, and actually hurt everybody around you. So if you like taking on a lot of enemies at once, the Guardian will be fun for you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the mace and shield is completely spec towards survivability and I guess tanking would be the closest approximate word you'd use. Now, I don't use tanking isn't exactly tanking in Guild Wars 2. There isn't an aggro meter. Aggro is determined by many factors, but there's no way that you can just generate more threat and guarantee that a monster is going to attack you. There are various things you can do. A lot of them have to do with what moves you use and how far you are away from an enemy. But basically in Guild Wars 2, just because you've got heavy armor doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to actually get attacked. Everybody gets attacked, including the squishies. So everybody's got to watch out for each other. So with the mace, you'll notice the third hit actually heals you. So even when you're attacking, you're gaining health. So you're regenerating health. You're healing yourself manually with a huge heal spell, almost 10,000. That's almost 2/3 of my life back every single time. And then you have the passive regeneration. And then when you have mace out, you actually heal yourself just by swinging on your enemies. Here's another symbol, the symbol of faith. This actually grants regeneration to you and all your allies who are in there. So just, again, by being near you, they're regenerating passively, and then by throwing down the symbol of faith every 8 seconds, they're regenerating even more health. The Protector's Strike. This one is probably a little difficult to use. A lot of people just hit all the buttons at once and hope something works, but the Protector's Strike actually is a concentrate. You know, a lot of people just hit it really fast and they break it, but by actually hitting it once, you're granted protection for a while, which is negative 33% incoming damage. Now the shield also grants protection, so when I hit 4, it actually does a burst of light that hurts enemies in a wave in front of them, but it also grants protection to surrounding allies up to 5. And the Shield of Absorption. At first I didn't really use this ability very often, but it eventually grew on me. It basically creates a protective bubble where arrows and projectiles can't get in, and I missed my opportunity, but you'll notice there, Shield of Absorption. While it's on, which is for 4 seconds, I can actually hit 5 again and detonate the shield, which actually heals incoming nearby. So I can take on a pretty ridiculous amount of enemies and come out ahead. So, like I wanted to show you, if I hit 5, I throw these chains up on these guys. Now that actually hurts them. You can see that buff right here, Binding Blade. But I can also press 5 again, and it sucks them all to me. Then I can use my AoE abilities to grind down their health, and you'll notice that throughout this whole experience I've lost only a fraction of my health. So if you don't want to have high repair bills and you want to throw yourself into danger's path over and over again without having to risk dying, the Guardian is definitely for you. But you do sacrifice a lot of DPS, so battles are going to be a little bit longer simply because you do less damage. But that's actually counteracted by the fact that you can take on so many enemies all at once, and you can expect to survive. I was just walking and a dynamic event started, so this should give me the opportunity to fight a lot of monsters all at once. So that's really one of the best parts about Guild Wars 2, is that things just happen around you, and yes, you can learn all the ins and outs and probably farm the area, but it's a lot funner just to explore at your leisure and have events just suddenly dynamically come into being. So right now I'm trying to defend Kinar Fort from branded creatures. In case you're wondering what branded creatures are, I believe they were mutated when a thing called an elder dragon simply flew over the land. So the big scar that you can see in the land here was just caused simply by one of these horrible ancient creatures just simply passing by. So that gives you an example of just how evil these creatures are. Is just by being near them, they can corrupt entire areas. So as I'm fighting, I generally just use the greatsword for a majority of my fights. But if I see the battle is the tide is turning, I actually swap over to my mace since it has so many healing and protection utilities associated. Now, like I showed you before, the third move on the maces actually returns some of my health. So you can see as I whip my my mace around, I'm actually gaining health back. I can also gain health by putting the symbol on the ground, and I can protect myself by concentrating. And oh, there they are. This was my Guild Wars 2 combat tutorial for the Guardian. The Guardian is most fun to play for people who want to jump into the action and have a lot of protection while sacrificing DPS or maximum damage output. It's fun to play a Guardian because just being around, people benefit from your presence. So if you're into dungeons or PvP, you'll definitely be a welcome addition to any team that you join. So if you enjoy the kind of gameplay, I'd highly recommend the Guardian.